The FBI director once again on the hot seat on Capitol Hill. President Trump firing back at Hillary Clinton after her scathing indictment of the 2016 race, insisting that FBI Director James Comey influenced voters.
I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off. If the election had been on October 27th, I'd be your president.
The president responding in a series of late-night tweets, even slamming his own FBI director. FBI Director Comey was the best thing that ever happened to Hillary Clinton in that he gave her a free pass for many bad deeds. The phony Trump-Russia story was an excuse used by the Democrats as justification for losing the election. Perhaps Trump just ran a great campaign. This response coming hours after Clinton took a jab at one of the president's sore spots.
I did win more than 3 million votes than my opponent.
I feel a tweet coming.
Well, fine. You know, better that than interfering in foreign affairs. If he wants to tweet about me, I'm happy to be the, diversion.
Comey expected to face a grilling from Democrats at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing over his potential influence on the campaign. Hillary Clinton blaming Comey's letter to Congress about her use of a private email server and WikiLeaks in Russia for hacking her campaign chairman's emails. Clinton refusing to even say Vladimir Putin's name.
He certainly interfered in our election, and it was clear he interfered to hurt me and to help my opponent.
But acknowledging some ownership for her defeat.
I take absolute personal responsibility. I was the candidate. I was the person who was on the ballot.
And now vowing to speak out against her former rival.
I'm now back to being an activist citizen and part of the resistance.
All this as sources tell CNN that former acting Attorney General Sally Yates will testify next week that she forcefully warned the Trump White House in January that then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn lied about discussing sanctions with a Russian ambassador, directly contradicting the White House's version of events.
They wanted to give, quote, a heads up to us on some comments that may have seemed in conflict with what he had sent the vice president out in particular.
Yates' testimony likely to raise further questions about why it took the administration nearly 3 weeks to fire Flynn, a decision that was ultimately made on the same day the story was reported in the Washington Post. Not to be ignored, that other Russia headline this morning, that phone call between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. They talked a lot, we're told, about Syria as well as North Korea. Both sides now looking ahead to the G20 summit when these two leaders will meet for the first time. Meanwhile, today, President Trump is expected to meet with Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas. Chris and Ali, back to you.
Joe, appreciate it. Lots to discuss. Let's bring in the panel. CNN political director David Chalian, CNN political analyst Patrick Healy, and CNN senior political analyst Ron Brownstein. David Chalian, your reaction to what we heard from Hillary Clinton in style and substance?
Yeah, if Hillary Clinton were to gather around her all of her political advisors and say, how should I talk about my election loss? I don't think this is what they would have advised her to do. I don't think this is what they would have come up with. And yet, I think that's why we got maybe perhaps the most sort of authentic, raw, certainly still angry, unresolved, maybe a little bitter about the election results. All of that was hanging out there, but it was real. It kind of felt like, to me, this is how Hillary Clinton is talking about her election loss with her friends. I don't think she's winning over any new fans from talking about it this way and blaming Comey and Putin, but it is clearly where her head is at and what she believes happened last year.
So interesting, Ron, because less than 24 hours after she basically said that James Comey's letter on the 28th was the deciding factor, James Comey is going to Capitol Hill this morning to talk about Russian meddling, et cetera, and they will ask him. I mean, Democratic senators do want to ask him what responsibility he takes and if he, overstepped his bounds. It's going to be very interesting. What are you looking for this morning?
Well, first, to David's point, I think, both things can be true. I mean, that it is she has a reasonable case that the Comey letter was the tipping point in a very close election. But the fact that it was that close to begin with, when she was running against a candidate that 60% of the country at that point, and still to this day, said was not qualified to be president, was itself extremely revealing. And there was nothing in her remarks yesterday that showed kind of any way forward for Democrats on the big choices they face about how to regain power. Today, look, I think on Director Comey, first of all, you have the president essentially throwing his own FBI director under the bus going into this hearing, accusing him of being soft and almost covering up for Hillary Clinton. And then from the other side, you're going to have Democrats, I think, asking a very pertinent question that Harry Reid was asking last fall. Why announce the renewed investigation into the email server, but not announce that you were investigating the question of Russian meddling in the election? I mean, that is a very difficult question, I think, for the FBI director to answer.
So, Patrick, you have the too much and not enough problem that we're going to have here today. In truth, Congress should not obsess on what can you tell me about Carter Page? What can you tell me about Flynn? And how deep does it go? And where's the proof on collusion? Because really, Comey shouldn't talk about any of that. And you can make a case that with oversight, Congress should be more focused on what happened with Russian meddling. How do we stop it the next time? And then you have on the other spectrum, Trump taking the bait once again.
Right.
And in taking the bait from Clinton, he minimized the relevance of these Russian investigations. One side too much, one side not enough.
Right. And a lot of Democrats feel that the party would be very smart to stay focused on President Trump and Russian meddling and why the FBI made those decisions and not relitigate the 2016 election. I mean, that's what President Trump would love the focus of this to be on, sort of Democrats, still being upset, rending their garments over Hillary Clinton's loss, what that meant, for the party, what that meant, for sort of the Democratic program. But Chris, I mean, the bigger issue right now is what does James Comey say when he goes in there, when he goes into the Senate, and how much is he able to reveal? How much is he able to set up what Sally Yates is going to be saying next week, about Michael Flynn, about the degree to which there is either just questions overall or a lack of transparency around the Trump administration.
Trump may have done him a favor by questioning once again the legitimacy of this as a canard, as a ruse by the Democrats. It does give an opening for Comey to say this is very real, otherwise I wouldn't be looking into it. But specifics of who he's looking at and what, he really shouldn't say anything.
No, he shouldn't get into that, and he knows that. But I mean, in terms of the Democrats and how they are pressing him and how much the Republicans try to give him cover, I mean, I think President Trump did in those tweets. He could have just gone after Hillary Clinton the way that he traditionally has, but instead he really decided to soften up Comey just as he's going before the Senate.